I'm Geoffrey I would like to explore today the question of whether RT players are toxic, whether SPGs are unbalanced compared to other vehicle classes in the game, or whether there is an unbalanced vehicle class, and what type of tank may be causing imbalance in the game. So I will start by looking at some charts, first from whatlife.com. This is the performance of, or rather the tanks players play, and in light blue at the bottom left, or the bottom, is the curve as it used to be, how players used to play. They used to play, of course, tier 1 a lot. A lot of players would play tier 1 before they do anything else and get a handling of the game. Then understand the controls, then gradually they move on to tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. Eventually they reach tier 5, and from tier 5 to tier 7 there's a flat curve, and very few people played above tier 7. So reaching tier 5 to tier 7 was the goal, and going above tier 7 was a curiosity in the old days. Now, this is not at all how it is today. Today's curve is the gray or dark gray curve on the same plot. Nobody plays a tier 1. New players go straight, as far as I can tell, maybe to tier 6 or tier 7. And you can see from the little peaks at tier 8 and tier 9, these little peaks exactly at tier 8 and exactly at tier 9 are played a lot. What does that mean? That means that some players only have tier 8 or tier 9 tanks. They don't have anything else. So you have these peaks at tier 8 and tier 9. And even at tier 10, very curious. But tier 10 could be explained in other ways. Tier 8 and tier 9 is not explained easily. First of all, the demographic has completely changed, whereas in the old days you wouldn't really play much about tier 7, almost not at all about tier 8. Now, nobody plays below tier 8. And secondly, what these peaks at tier 8 and tier 9 suggest is that a lot of people recently, in the last year or so, take advantage of the fact that you log into the game and instantly you've been given a free reward tank at tier 8 or tier 9, like the GSOR tank we got in Holiday Ops. And then they go straight into tier 8 and they play this free tier 8 tank or tier 9 tank they got without having any experience. I've seen people like that. I haven't seen them so much at tier 8 that I've seen them in some of the lower tiers. I joined a battle, someone had a tier 6 tank, I think. I did very poorly, didn't do anything. So checked his stats and he had fewer than 50 battles altogether. It has happened also in the past. I was in a battle, it was a 2-tier, top tier 7 or tier 8 tanks. They did nothing in the game. I checked the stats and they had between them less than 100 battles. The two of them, and they were top tier. So that happens. That's what the first curve shows. I played 15,000 battles before I moved on to tier 6. I had played about 9 or 10,000 battles before I moved to tier 5. I thought then that was normal. Now it's unheard of. Nobody does that. Go straight to tier 8, tier 9, from the looks of this curve. Now, what we see on the right is what types of tanks people play. And I'm not sure if this is all time or if it's recent. That's not so clear. So these two little rounded things. So tank type distribution, very few people play SPGs, maybe 10%. A lot of people play heavy tanks. What does that tell you? Well, there's a number of things. They're advertised a lot. They're hyped up a lot by YouTube content providers, by wargaming. SPGs are frowned upon as being toxic, for example. So that discourages people from playing SPGs. And so how do they do in terms of game performance? From the little circle above, heavy tanks pretty much outperform everybody. Certainly in terms of win rate, SPGs, which rely a lot on actual kills to make an impact, have maybe half the win rate of heavy tanks, which is very, very interesting. Okay, so let's move then on to the some of the tanks that people play. Okay. The top, these are the top 100, I think, all nations from What Life. I'm not sure where they get the statistics, if people have to send these in, or whether they get them from World of Tanks directly. You can see a lot of heavy tanks, a lot of mediums, a couple of lights, a couple of TDs, and the first SPG was in position 70 or so. And I think there were a couple of SPGs, but not very many. Yeah, you can see there are a lot of heavy tanks. I counted them. There are about 36 out of 100 top tanks in the game. 36 in this website were heavy tanks. And these are the worst tanks. You can see the Kanoi, Panzer, various things like that. These are the worst. Yeah? You can see GW, Tiger. So there's a lot more SPGs here, among the worst. And very much fewer heavy tanks. In fact, out of the worst 100, only 21 were heavy tanks. So in the best 100, 36%, more than a third, were heavy tanks. In the worst 100, only 21, about 20% were heavy tanks. So that's already curious. So some of the tanks, mediums and heavies, would do well. There's one called the Crusher. I think it's a new one. It has 60% win rate. Maybe it's in the test server or something. I'm not really sure. There's a couple of other, mostly heavy tanks or mediums, have win rates about 55%. And then they come in green. Tanks with win rates below 50%. As I said, lots of mediums and heavies. There's some classic ones. There's a Project Ion, the Bizidon 76, the Skoda T56, of course, the Batinosity Jan Burask. It's in the top 50. I think these are the top 50. Contradictions has made it to the top 50. I think I've selected the top 50 now. All tiers. Was that tier 8? I think now we're all tiers. Top tanks, all tiers. The Panzer II Panzer II-J, there's various other OP tanks. The Crushes there again. There's some specific ones. The M13M, this is the new Rambo tank. It's only be used in the server. It's played by the best players in the test server, so that doesn't count. There's a Su-76I, a very old premium tier 4, tier 3 tank. The sword is no longer available. They don't sell it anymore. So those are some old data. Of course, the Panzer 5.4, that's in the top 50, tier 5. And also in the Alpha, this was the Alpha test or something, as well as the proper one that's in the game. As I said, 1 out of 136, obviously 279 early was there as well, obviously the top 20 or so, or top 10, I think it was 10th or 9th or something. So out of the 136 are heavies. It's quite amazing. The KB220 is in the top 50. What other interesting tanks do we see here? As a concept, I think it was one of those weird yaw-like tanks. The Panzer 38K, very interestingly, is one of the new tanks we're going to hold the FCF5. It's in the top 50. But no SPG at all in top 50. So the best ranked SPG, I think, was the M43, what is M40 and 43? That was in the in position 70 or 80 at tier 8. These are all tiers. Actually, there is the Grasshopper, the Leichter Feldhaubitze 105 auf B2. It's a KV2R. I'm not sure if there's a top 100 now or the top 50. I think we're still at the top 100. So the Grasshopper was the top 100, but I don't think it was in the top 50. There's some other interesting ones like the M54 Renegade, Skoda T56, not as surprisingly. What others? There was some. There is an SPG, the Sexton 1 at tier 3. Who plays that? 19 battles or 22 battles, sorry. I don't know what that means. I think there's just some people, just a few people who submitted some data and they played the sextant. I mean, I don't think that means much. So the 82 is here. Objective 52U, the defender. TS5 was good. Breakthrough TD, the turtle. The Minotauro, interestingly, is in the top 100, all tiers. But as I said, I'm not exactly sure because the numbers of battles in some of these tanks are so low. I'm not sure how much we can trust these numbers. In any case, we only had 1 or 2 TDs so far, SPGs so far. So it's clear that it's not the SPGs that are OP. They're not the ones which are changing or having a big impact in the game. It very much looks, considering the imbalance, that heavy tanks are unbalanced, that they have too much of an impact in the game, because we have 36 among the top 100, but only 21 among the bottom 100. There's no real explanation for that. Okay, and so we're still in the tanks above 50% win rates. We have the OI, we have the Tortoise, we have the KB1, all very heavy tanks. The 56 TP, for example, not all of them, but many that are heavily armored. The AMBT. Of course, there are others like the Cobra, a special, the GSOR 1008. The Nurgle with the impenetrable front, or experimental. You can see that in the Matilda Black Prince, at their level, they are very, very strong. And here we're at tanks that are above 50%. They have various ones who have the 35i, one of my favorite ones, but only has a win rate of a little bit over 50%. And I played about as much as the Aerial V39, Aerial V39, which I have a similar win rates and similar kind of performance. So it's not exactly OP. I don't know what the Aerial V39 is, but certainly the Aerial V39 is not considered a toxic tank or something. And here are the worst. So among the worst we have Patton the tank. We have the Canoë Panzer. We have the French AMX 65T. I thought it was buffed recently in any case. We have GSOR the tank. I suspect because a lot of new players play it. It's not a bad tank. Whereas also have the TV, VTU concept. These are the worst tanks. Churchill gun carrier. That's very interesting. The Rheinmetall Panzerwagen, awful light tank. What else do we have here? Oh, the Panther 88. That's really awful. Where's the Churchill gun carrier? That's really, really a pain to play. It's a really awful tank. It was buffed like a year ago, but it's still awful. I've sold it. One of my most hated tanks. And there is now, we see a couple of SPGs among the worst. Of course, they're lower tiers, but no, they're not among the best tanks. Here's the ARL V39, kids. We're wondering, overall win rate 48%. So I have similar win A, similar everything, and the Su 85 IOs in the ARL V39. So some of these stats are out of date. Some of them possibly are of players who only play some tanks. Who knows? Not necessarily players who play tank disorders like I did. Here you can still see some very, mediocre tanks. The KV-122, that's another tank that are rage sold, along with the Panther 88, another really awful tank, win rate 48%. Some light tanks that are not very good. The Conway as well, sometimes it's rated as good, it's not. The Panzer 3-4, sometimes rated as decent, it's not. Yeah, Panzer 4, I played a lot. Global win rate, according to this website, 48%. Okay, and here are the stats from another website, Tomato GG. What you see here is the top 100. There's only one TD in the top 100 from tier 8. There's only one SPG, I'm sorry, and that is the M40 and 43. You can see that the top tanks are all premiums. The top 50 are all premiums, and the top 100 are almost all premiums with the exception of a couple of tanks. I think Tiger 2 is one that was not a premium tank, and it was in the top 100 exceptionally. So here are the bottom ones. Here you see that all the worst tanks in the game, there's a balance between premiums and Tech 3 tanks among the worst tanks in the game by win rate. That's tier 8, where there are obviously a lot of premium tanks, but a much bigger representation of Tech 3 tanks among the worst 50 in the game. And another thing that's again curious is that among the 100 worst tanks at tier 8, 21 or 19 or 21 were heavy tanks, but 39, according to this website, were heavy tanks among the top 100. So your best bet is to play a premium heavy tank. That's quite clear. If you're playing a tier 8 in any case. You see here some of the win rates of some of the tanks that are considered really good. Some of them are not really available, like the ISU 130 and some of the other ones, but BZ 176 is available, is in the game. Project Ion is in the game. These are heavy tanks. Meal, the medium, the EBR, of course. Squad IT-56 is heavy. So these are the best performing tanks in the game right now. And as I said, a lot of them are heavy tanks. And the question is, which tanks are really OP? Which type of tanks could we call toxic? Which type of tanks, which type of class are a problem or can be a problem in a battle or in a game? Thank you for listening.